But little does first year Fenton know that a whole identity crisis awaits her. This is the flip side of the boy story that is me transferring into medicine mid-year. More than anything, I think there was an overgeneralized pattern of thinking where I had thought that success in one area of my life predicated success in all other areas of my life. Hello guys, welcome back to Freedom Means Embracing Her. My name is Ofente, and my hope for myself, yourself, and this channel alike is in my being, in my daring, and in my becoming. I offer you the freedom to do the same. So today we're going to be speaking about a very life-altering year in my life, although I feel like every year is. However, I think this was a very critical starting point. And this is the flip side of the boy story that is me transferring into medicine mid-year at the University of Pretoria. I would like to put out the disclaimer that the University of Pretoria no longer offers this program. And I'd also like to caution those who may be watching this prematurely. So this is to say, if you're in first year and the idea of failure has already been perpetuated onto you, I don't want you to internalize anything that I'm saying. And yeah, my suggestion would be not to watch. But if you feel like, you got it all together, then you are more than welcome to keep on watching. So where do I start? I think I'll just go back to just after the big event. So I opened the portal, I see congratulations, I scream, house erupts, everybody's happy, I'm happy. Everybody says their thanks. I return back to Pretoria, a newly appointed medical student, eager to learn, ready and very excited to embark on this new journey that is now a newly answered prayer. But little does first year Fenton know that a whole identity crisis awaits her. Okay, so I had this expectation. I'm not quite sure if I'm the only one, but I had this expectation that once I got into medicine, everything in my life would just seamlessly fall into place, like immediately. And I'm speaking about finances, I'm speaking about familial issues being resolved, I'm speaking about friendships being redeemed and restored, I'm speaking about finding the partner, I'm speaking about, I don't know, I also expected that my hopeful life would just emerge out of somewhere after I got into medicine. And I think this pattern of thinking or this expectation wasn't necessarily due to impatience, nor was it due to needs unmet, even though they were needs that were very much apparent. But more than anything, I think there was an overgeneralized pattern of thinking where I had thought that success in one area of my life predicated success in all other areas of my life. So much so that I think also this is what kind of unveils the whole identity crisis, is that I also expected a personality change to just emerge out of the sky. So I had expected myself to all of a sudden become a very easygoing person, to be a social butterfly, a very outgoing person. And if you know me, to know me is to know that I'm open to meeting people, but easygoing is not who I am. And I feel like if it's not your nature and if it's not a skill you've acquired, it would have just been me bending over backwards. And I understand it now, given that I think I just had this desire to fit in somewhere. So anywhere. I thought that, if I had the nature of an easygoing person, it would have been easier for me, or it would fulfill that desire, the desire of fitting in. So I expected my life holistically to just become roses and daisies overnight, sugar and spice and everything nice. I even expected, I don't know, my self-confidence to just also just fall out of the sky. Yeah. So essentially, I was hoping for a great sense of fulfillment in all areas of my life because I managed to achieve the start of a dream in one area of my life. However, I think I may have an idea as to why. As many of us do, I seek a great deal of validation in my academic performance. And given that my most recent academic triumph, for me, it was an indicator of my worthiness for all my heart's desires to be fulfilled. Not only was it a distorted and flawed way of thinking, I mean, the causal link itself being quite questionable. However, in retrospect, I think it spoke to a deficit mindset. And why I say deficit mindset is because in anything and everything, you know to give so you can take, you know to sow so that you can reap. However, I think in certain individuals, we tend to overachieve in one area of our lives to compensate for all other areas that lack. And I think this just went to show that a great deal of who I was, a great deal of my identity, my perception and my interpretation of myself lay desolate in a world that praise critical thinking, where human connection isn't even possible. And I highlight this because I think a lot of us tend to learn to formulate ideas of who we are based off of the interpersonal relationships we have with others. So already it was quite clear that, even though I didn't have that revelation then, but it was quite clear that the basis of my sense of self fundamentally was just very incoherent, or just say not well formulated. So let me paint the picture of my first interaction on campus in second year. So we had OSCE practice. So this is essentially where we learn basic clinical skills. And yeah, our first station was learning how to put in an IV in. And the instructor decided to hand me a bag of fluids, right? And she asked me a very simple question, very, very simple question. I think she saw that I panicked. And so she assured me, she's like, no, you can read it off the IV bag itself and you can tell us. And I still kind of was like, I don't know, something in me, like, yeah, basically, I got scared, I got shy, turned red, I froze, I, like, you know, I don't know, but in the movies when like someone is just like, yeah, yeah, that was basically me. And I quite literally said, no, I don't know the answer, and something I simply could have read off the bag itself. And I gave the bag back. You can imagine how embarrassing and humiliating that was. So yeah, here I was, completely dumbfounded. My lack of self-confidence laid bare for all to see. And yeah, it was an acute experience. I wouldn't ever want to relive it, obviously. So yeah, yeah. So here I was, um, unable to hide behind the diligent student, the good girl persona that I had built for myself in high school. So much so where, teachers never actually asked me any questions in class or put me on the spot, because they knew that I was up to date with my schoolwork. I was a good girl, I was a good student, stellar star. So, and for the most part, they knew that no, Fenton knows her work. So why do we have to ask Fenton? That's fine. And I think that kind of coddled me to some sense, to just be comfortable with not having to answer. And then here I was, second year, feeling so embarrassed. But yeah, and this is something I definitely didn't need at the time, because already my sense of self, my identity was already shaken up, because by this point we're halfway through block 3, and block 3 was not going well at all. At all. And when I mean not going well, I'm not speaking about, not being promotion worthy, not going well. As in, like, I am barely making it not going well. So, yeah. Mm-mm. And so this negative sense of self started manifesting in the form of fear. And for me, it wasn't necessarily procrastination. The reason being that medicine itself is quite a rapid paced degree. And so every day you're learning a new concept. It's not a matter of like, oh, you've been on this topic for a week or so or two. Quite literally, every day you're learning something new. And so I felt the need to, well, out of fear of not necessarily being left behind, but out of fear of being crushed or being made to feel small or inadequate, unworthy, I moved with haste. I moved with haste, my feet moving faster, far faster than my mind could actually comprehend. So I didn't have time to actually process what was happening or what I could implement to ensure that there's a better structure that allows me to, at least perform, because there was like a very highly diminished performance academically. Yeah, no. It it wasn't cute. It really wasn't cute. And so I think for me, the biggest way in which fear had manifested in my life then and there was the voices in my head, that very self critical voice inside. And initially, the voices were always so subtle, but full of doubt and always almost suggestive. Like, you know, why am I here? Am I smart enough? Do I belong here? Yeah, yeah. And then, I mean, given again that they were very subtle, very suggestive, I didn't think it was necessary to put in any, precautionary measures in place to try and mitigate those voices and to mitigate those thoughts. And so they grew a life of their own. They grew a life of their own, I kid you not. They became very deprecating, very condescending, very ruthless. When I say ruthless, I mean ruthless, like no mercy, ruthless. And so, yeah, actually, let me just paint another picture to show you how ruthless these voices were. So, this is during anatomy time. Yeah, during anatomy, and I could already pick up that there was a pattern that over the weekends I had a very low mood. I was very disinterested, actually disinterested in learning. Never mind anatomy itself, but in learning. I just and yeah, very sluggish kind of, move on the weekends. And yeah, it was just this despondency, this heavy cloud that just became more prominent over the weekends, that became impossible to bear. Yeah, gradually I could see the pattern. But again, like I said, I didn't put in any precautionary measures. And so there was this one particular week where by Thursday already I could tell that no, it's gonna happen again. And this time it feels very, very heavy. Very, very heavy. And so the Friday after dissections, um, this was these are the precautionary measures I put in, because also I'm trying to sustain myself for the weekend so that I am productive at least over the weekend. So the Friday, I come back, come back from Prince Off. I go by myself takeaway. I get back to my room. My room is a mess as always, as it often is in medicine, especially like second year, fourth year, darling. Either way, my room is a mess. So again, to preserve my sanity, I decided, you know what, while I still have the energy now, because usually I clean Saturday mornings, but I'm like, whilst I still have the energy now and the capacity, let me clean. So after I buy my food, I clean my room, I take a shower, I sit down in my bed, I watch a good movie, or was I binging a show? I don't know, either or. I'm laughing, So I'm trying to uplift my mood, uplift my spirits. Yeah. And then, yeah, I eat my food, go to sleep. Why am I getting teary? My goodness. Okay, I go to sleep. And then I wake up the next morning. I wake up the next morning, room cleaned, last last night, didn't study, took a break. And the voices did not give me the time of day. They didn't even allow me to open my eyes. So even when I started slowly regaining consciousness, coming out of my sleep, they attacked. They started, "You're a failure. You can't even get 50%. What are you doing? You're supposed to be a doctor. Who wants a doctor who can't perform well academically, And again, just telling me that I'm stupid, you know. So I crashed and I crashed so hard. I remember just crying myself back to sleep, and not like a cry, like from my core. From my core, I was sobbing. I was just like, I cried until I eventually fell back asleep. And then I just woke up, showered, went to the study. Yeah, yeah. It was a very dark time. Very, very dark time. But either way, that's how ruthless the voices were. Before I go on, I'd like to highlight the critical differences between incompetence and inadequacy. I think we tend to, you know, hold the two terms to a synonymous idea, whereas you're not. Because for the most part, I kept telling myself that I was incompetent, but really at its core. I mean, I think that sometimes, yes, inadequacy can translate into incompetence, which is something you need to be highly vigilant of because it happens just like that. Yeah. Yeah. So for me, really, it was a matter of feeling inadequate more than it was incompetence. But again, like I said, it can easily translate. One can translate into the other. Hence why I think they're used so in such an intertwined manner. Again, incompetence just speaks to a lack of skill, inadequacy speaks to a lack of self-esteem, self-worth. Yeah, yeah. And so because of the inadequacy, I thought that I was incompetent, and so that just kind of reinforced all those original ideas that I spoke of, those voices that were very suggestive of me not belonging, so on and so forth. So I think that's something that one also needs to be highly mindful of. And then going back to the story, given the picture that I painted, yeah, I just remember feeling very, very. I just remember the meditation of my mind during that season, quite literally always being, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, like quite literally. And what I was in need of wasn't necessarily healing, but again, that whole depiction was just to highlight the level of desperation I felt and the level of hopelessness I felt. Because I was like, Lord, if you do not help me, I don't know who or what is going to help me, because I am sinking by the milliseconds. Not the second, by the milliseconds. I am just zwa. And for me, it was also just to communicate, or when I think about it, it was, in a way, it was me saying that I can't even see the light of hope itself. I can't see hope itself. I can only see an extension of it. So if I could just touch that small thread, please, I would very much appreciate it. So being someone who had prided themselves on having trained themselves to approach every adversity as mind over matter, that being having a growth mindset. So each time I fall or I trip, I know to get up, pivot, and to try again. Yeah, so much so that it became my superpower, a superpower that I myself managed to harness, and not something that was simply gifted to me, something that helped me defy circumstances, something that helped me go from being an average student to a top achiever, something that helped me become essentially having my own mind fight against me in such a vicious way left me utterly defeated. So, what now? I just passed anatomy. I am admitted for a supplementary exam for block 3. And so I've come to the end of myself. Um, yeah, so this was a season where it come to a point where I realized that matters were very dire. I needed help, and I had to admit to myself that I needed help, which can be very, you can imagine this whole predicament in and of itself was very shameful for me. I carried a lot of shame from it. I don't even want to lie to you. And I think it's normal too. If you are used to holding yourself to a certain standard, I had to relinquish the shame, or not allow the shame to have such a tight grip on me that, yeah, I just had to lay or submit my anxious thoughts somewhere to a place where I felt most safe. And so I spoke to my cousin, and she received me so well. She reassured me, she reassured me. She shared her own story with me. She was very kind. And more than that, she probed me with a question, or with an idea, really. And she was just like, don't focus so much on what you are, focus more so on who you are. And that has helped me become the person that I am today. This person with a far greater sense of self, who's still building herself up though, but I've come a really long way nonetheless. So yeah, and she also recommended 2 books for me to read: Battle of the Mind, or the Battlefield of the Mind by Joyce Meyer, and Atomic Habits. And I read a little bit of both, took a little from both of them. But specifically with Atomic Habits, I only read the first 4 chapters, but I resonated very much with the prologue of the book itself. So here the author shares his own personal story. And again, this just goes to show that there is great power in vulnerability, so much so that in your connection, and you connecting with other people, connecting with his audience per se, it helped me myself to be liberated from that shame of not performing so well, of not being as well equipped as I felt before in the past. Yeah. So yeah, and specifically, he, besides sharing his story after the tragic incident of, you know, one of his teammates hitting him with a baseball bat, and he sustained multiple skull and facial fractures, had to be admitted to the emergency department, so on and so forth. He just also highlighted that at the foundation of him coming back, or bouncing back from that big setback, because he had this great desire to play baseball professionally, he focused more so on building on building good habits that would help him form a good foundation for his day-to-day. Minor habits that may not seem quite related to the structure you're trying to build, and major habits that are. And so he highlighted just, sleeping habits, making sure that your room is tidy, which I also then myself implemented, which helped a great lot. Honestly speaking, how people say that, your space, your intimate space, your room is always a reflection of your mind. So it helped just clear things a bit more, structure things a bit more. Like I said before, I didn't give myself the time to comprehend. And so with that being said, there was little to no structure. Everything was just messy, as was my room most of the time. And yeah. as well as study habits, but that's something we're going to get into right now. And for me specifically, I worked on optimizing my energy. I worked on better study habits. I worked on, the emotional aspect, which was me journaling and, affirming myself. And there's a specific affirmation that I'm going to highlight, but there were so many altogether. So with the optimizing energy, I was in the gym every day, and I was doing little things, like small. I wasn't doing extreme workouts, but I focused more on cardio. I just needed that feel good to come, those endorphins to kick in. So I felt more energized to actually study. And eating well, eating lighter meals, healthier meals, helped a great lot in optimizing my energy. And then when it came to study habits, I always ensured that my study space was conducive. So I never studied in my room, always in the study area downstairs or by the Marinsky Library. I focus more on understanding the work, even though Block 3 can seem more like a cram, but I think it's only the biochem side. But everything else, really, you do need the rest of the physiology. You can go you can go far further if you understand. And so I started from scratch, from the bottom. And I started from July till, because at UP we write subs like at the end of the year, specifically medicine, not all degrees. So I had a lot of time, so I did bit by bit. Every week I tried to do at least 1 or 2 lectures. Foundationally, I use Ninja Nerd and Armindo. I don't want to say his surname because I might just swear. So yeah, that's what I did, and yeah, it helped a great lot, honestly. Those 4 things did wonders. What did they? I mean, yeah, I passed, so it's fine. They did wonders for then and there. And Shem, also just going back to all of that, now I actually knew my work and I understood it, So you win at the end of the day, either way. And then, yeah, apart from that, the affirmation that I hyper focused on was, I don't want to misquote it. I don't want to misquote it. 2 Timothy 2 verse 7, God has not given me the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And that's something I reiterated to myself day in, day out. Yeah, more so I was fixated on the sound mind and the power because I needed the strength and I needed the peace of mind. But you know how scripture says that perfect love casts out all fear. I didn't have revelation of it then, but I think sometimes you honestly just need an embrace. Similarly to what my cousin offered me, to just reassure you and be like, it's okay, and you're not defined by this. You are not a failure. Yes, there are habits, there are structures that you've been practicing. There are habits that you've been practicing, there are structures that you failed to form that have led you to where you are today. But you can still be redeemed at the end of the day, being given that level of grace, learning to extend myself, that grace myself, did a great lot. And again, with the affirmations, I kept reiterating to myself that, you know what, it's okay not to get things right on the first try. It's really okay not to get things right on the first try. And being someone who's so high performing, being used to getting things right on the first try, not doing so feels like your whole world is just tumbling down. So yeah, just those small reassurances and journaling. However, I felt what still needed to be unpacked. I did so. So yeah, that's basically all that I did, and that's it. That's how I navigated failure in second year. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we thank the Lord. We thank the Lord that I've come this far. And there is something that Viga, I think it's Viga Shipalani. I don't, you know her name, but she also said herself that, be mindful of the fact that your identity is not rooted in your output. And high performing people, we tend to do so. yeah, I tend to do so. And that's something I had to modulate in my own mind myself. Even though it's not a quote that I knew then and there, I was listening to a podcast. I was listening to a gender woman and she was on it and she was a guest speaker and she said that and I was like, oh wow, actually, my identity is not rooted in my output. So yeah. Well guys, I hope that well, generally, I just hope that this liberates you and this breaks the shackles off of your mind are just keep you bound and you keep sinking and you're not quite sure how to keep your head above water. I hope that I've been able to impart. I just hope that I've been able to impart some kind of wisdom to help you navigate the season and to reassure you that you can get to the other side victorious. Maybe feeling very crushed still, but yeah. Oksalayo, you go to the other side. And it's something that Toni Morrison said that sometimes you don't survive whole, sometimes you survive in parts. But the grandeur of life is that attempt. It's not about coming to full, complete solution. Because a complete and full solution tends to only occur over a matter of years. And even that solution is not necessarily external, it's more so internal. So, yeah. Bye.